Less than 24 hours to the NFL trade deadline. Niners have not made a trade, but they are getting reinforcements as they hit the practice field, including Christian McCaffrey joining the party. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you, as always, at BD Peacock, at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love all you everydayers that join us here 5 days a week on Locked On 49ers. And if you're new to the program, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. We've got you covered all season long. And some good news today as the 49ers hit the practice field in preparation for Week 10. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. All right. No doubt the phone lines are being worked, Croc. Everything a little quiet here on this Monday. Maybe Tuesday prior to the deadline, Tuesday morning or late Monday night, we'll get a lot more activity as Week 9 officially ends post Monday Night Football. But right now, I think a lot of teams are laying in the weeds, and no big news to report for the San Francisco 49ers. We'll see if they make a move, but they are getting better without doing any trades at all, Croc. And the big news on this Monday, bonus practice day for the San Francisco 49ers as they get ready for Week 10. The practice window has officially opened for Christian McCaffrey, and he is coming back, and he will be on the field. He already was on the field for practice on Monday, and that's huge for the 49ers, who have opened the practice window for running back Christian McCaffrey, and will no doubt add a huge element to the 49ers offense when he's ready to go.
Excited to get Christian McCaffrey back. You know, this is a guy that we've seen, again, or not just him, but he has helped the 49ers be so good in the red zone, and that's definitely been down. Simon has been something that a lot of the fan base, a lot of you and I have kind of worried about to start this season. And when you look back on some of these losses by the 49ers, an opportunity to put up a little, just a few more points, they could easily be 6-2, just as much they are 4-4 right now. And I think these worries started early. It was kind of masked against the New York Jets because the 49ers put up so many points, but 6 field goals in that game, 18 points scored by the kicker. I think Christian McCaffrey definitely helped the 49ers be a little bit more dominant in that area. And that's what they're looking for. And it might just be his ability to, catch the ball out of the backfield or draw more attention to him so it opens up for other guys who are doing great right now. George Kittle having one of the better starts to a season in his career, but get even more red zone targets. Deebo Samuel, maybe he could score a little bit easier. So Christian McCaffrey, I think a lot of people are looking forward to just seeing him on the field and seeing him produce. But for me, it's what does it mean for everybody else?
Yeah, and you touched on some things. There's a lot more there than is going to immediately show up in the box score for Christian McCaffrey, because yards per carry might not be the big gain getting Christian McCaffrey back, because they've had a sound run game for most of the year. Jordan Mason's done a phenomenal job, and we've even seen some big plays recently from the rookie fourth rounder and Isaac Guerrero showing up and making some plays out of the backfield. So the 49ers running the ball have been fine, but the two big things, and you mentioned it, is red zone, and hopefully Christian McCaffrey helps what ails them in the red zone and is able to do that. There's big plays, and I've got some stats here on the big plays and the lack of big plays that the 49ers offense has made this year, and Christian McCaffrey can certainly help that out with his athletic ability. And you mentioned the gravity that Christian McCaffrey brings. Defenses pay attention to Christian McCaffrey when he's in the game. Does that open things up for other players? And so there's levels to the Christian McCaffrey return that helps the 49ers, and it definitely goes beyond yards per carry for the 49ers offense. And so it'll be a lot of fun, and we'll see if he's actually cleared to play and is activated for this week. He's got a 21-day practice window, so it could be any of the next 3 weeks that Christian McCaffrey's actually activated. And if things go south, potentially they might have to shut him down if he's not activated in those 21 days. That's the rules of IR. So we'll see if it's week 10. Is it week 11 for the Seattle Seahawks that Christian McCaffrey finally gets activated? But the 49ers really getting healthy all around. And I want to point to some more players, John Feliciano, Juwan Jennings, Jake Moody that are back at practice. But just a couple more notes on Christian McCaffrey, Croc. And I mentioned the big plays. And shout out to Al Sacco on Twitter, Al Sacco 49, who had some numbers here on the number of 20-plus yard touchdowns that the 49ers scored in the regular season last year versus this year. Last year, Debo had 5 touchdowns of 20-plus yards. George Kittle had 3 touchdowns of 20-plus yards. McCaffrey had 3 touchdowns of 20-plus yards. Brandon Ayuk had 2. Jordan Mason had 1. And Kyle Juszczyk even had 1 touchdown of 20-plus yards. So if you're doing the math there, that's 15 touchdowns of 20-plus yards in the regular season. This year, Croc, guess how many 20-plus yard touchdowns the 49ers have scored?
2.
You're good.
Lucky guess. That's just was one of my football numbers.
Okay.
So I guess 2,
you just threw it up against the wall. It's a great guess. 2. 1 for Debo, 1 for Jennings. That's it. So halfway through the season, the 49ers have 2 20-plus yard touchdowns when they had 15 all of the regular season last year. So some catching up to do. McCaffrey had 3 of those. And Garindo would have had a couple if he didn't slide and didn't go down inside the 5-yard line. So the 49ers could have had a couple more, but they'd still be way off the pace.
I was thinking, I knew the Debo and Seattle one. I was like, what's the other one? And I was actually thinking George Kittle had a big catch and run.
Yeah.
But no 20-yard plus touchdowns for George Kittle, huh?
Yeah, and even some big runs from Jordan Mason haven't been housed. Kittle, he was put out right at he had the 43-yarder, and he went down inside the 5-yard line out of bounds, and so he didn't quite make it in either. So they've had some big plays, but I mean that's a huge difference in runaway touchdowns, long touchdowns that they haven't had this year. And that's part of the reason why they're kicking field goals instead. Because like this is 20-plus yards. This isn't like 60 yards where you're flipping the entire field. This is 20 yards, scoring from the 20-yard line, the 25-yard line, the 30-yard line. So probably has a lot to do in addition to the red zone struggles where the 49ers are settling for field goals, maybe punting in some situations where they might have scored a touchdown last year. And so I think that's something that there's some, I don't know how sticky that is year to year, Croc, and I don't have the numbers previous of 2023, but certainly it was more than 2 in past years for the first halves of the seasons. And I think it's something that absolutely has been a factor for the 49ers. And I think it's something that would probably regress to the mean anyway, even if they had the same players and the same calls and the same, everything back in the second half of the year. So that's going to jump up. So I think big plays as well as red zone are 2 ways the 49ers offense can put more points on the board as far as touchdowns go.
That really is a shocking stat, especially for how many explosive plays I feel like the 49ers have had. I mean, for a while, Jordan Mason was leading the NFL in like 10-plus yard carries. Now, I know that's not a ton, but I mean, how many of these are you assuming that this guy scored on? And what we're hearing right now, and maybe if you're trying to compare the difference between Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason purely just running the rock, it's one guy is going to punch a few of those into the end zone as opposed to Jordan Mason, who maybe has to just be a little closer.
Yeah, and we've kind of seen that with Mason already, and Garendo's created some bigger runs than maybe Jordan Mason has, even though he's got a lot fewer carries. As good as Mason, I mean, Mason's been awesome. Undrafted rookie running back. He's been phenomenal for the 49ers, and they've been running the ball pretty well. But it can definitely be more dynamic with Christian McCaffrey. And it'll be interesting to see as Garendo's probably earned some touches on offense. And Jordan Mason, you don't kick him to the curb when Christian McCaffrey comes back. Is it going to be a situation where McCaffrey carries it 25 times and Mason gets 1 carry a game? Is it going to go back to that? I think it shouldn't. It probably won't. But with Kyle Shanahan,
I was going to say, you got to remember who we're dealing with. And I was asked this question earlier today. Like, hey, man, what's going to happen with Jordan Mason and Garendo? Or like, what are their roles going to be? And it's like, what role? Kyle Shanahan, the moment CMC says, hey, I'm ready, I'm healthy, I'm ready to go. Kyle, I don't know if he just loses track of what's going on, but guys aren't getting any carries. You lost CMC. You had a healthy Jordan Mason. And you also had a healthy Garendo. And instead of saying, you know what, let's try to make sure that we keep our healthy running back healthy in Jordan Mason, it's like, no, I'm just going to run him 25 times, even if we're up double digits in the game. So, I mean, you'd assume like, oh, man, well, look how well this guy is running. Look how well this guy is running. I don't know if Kyle cares. I think he just, whoever is going to be the hot hand And the guy that is healthy enough to tote the rock, 20 plus times, he's going to continue to give him the ball. This is something going back. I mean, last year you had Elijah Mitchell, who he can run the rock. We saw him run for nearly 1,000 yards while missing like 4 or 5 games. And it comes back into a situation where it's like, oh, well, we got CMC now, so we just don't need you. And if you think back to even when Elijah Mitchell got hurt, originally, it was in that Chicago Bear game, week 1, the monsoon game. He was running very well. And he came back later that year and it's like, well, we already got Christian McCaffrey, so we just don't need you anymore at all.
And we'll see if the Achilles tendonitis changes that for Kyle Shanahan. And he actually said in the offseason he was going to have to worry about Christian McCaffrey's workload. And that was when he thought he was going to be ready to go probably for week 1. But just like 2 years ago at the trade deadline, the 49ers get a second half of the season with Christian McCaffrey when they didn't have him in the first half of the season. We'll see what kind of difference he makes for the 49ers offense. He's not the only one back for the 49ers after a week 9 bye, and why the 49ers might heat up in November next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff, so you can get incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, whether you're going to see a 49ers game or you want to go see a Warriors game. Maybe you want to go see the San Jose Sharks, and you can get tons of great deals on last-minute tickets as well. Last-minute deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after an event starts. Exclusive flash deals at Game Time, sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more, and zone deals as well, where you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for big savings. So the next time you're going to an event, check Game Time, and maybe for those last-minute tickets as well. And I've had great success finding some awesome deals on last-minute seats at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. And while you're at that game, how about get in on the action as well with the FanDuel app and get ready to tackle the NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win on that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Live in-game betting, tons of props every week on the NFL, season-long bets, draft props, who's the next coach to get fired, props, so much more. NBA's going, NHL's going. You can find it all at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, Croc, one quick quote this about Christian McCaffrey's return from the big man himself, Trent Williams. He said, quote, definitely super happy for Christian McCaffrey that it turned the corner and he was able to go out and do what he loves again. Even had a glimpse of Greenlaw out there sprinting around with a helmet on. Just seeing that got our juices going. So the practice window not open for Dre Greenlaw, and I don't know about running. Usually guys, when they're working out on the side, don't have helmets on. Maybe that's just where Greenlaw's mindset is. He's doing stuff and running on the side and had his helmet on while he was doing it. So maybe Dre Greenlaw getting a little bit closer to his return potentially later on this month. Or even in December, which would be a huge boost to the 49ers defense. But the 49ers offense not only get Christian McCaffrey back, but they get guard John Feliciano back at practice. His practice window was opened Monday. Wide receiver Juwan Jennings, it's not a hip pointer apparently. It is a psoas muscle, which is like a muscle that wraps around between the back and around the front of the hip. And I've kind of dealt with some weird hip pain, and they thought it was a psoas because it's like that's like the thing that if like they don't. The doctors can't figure out what's wrong with you. They're like, it might be the psoas because it's like this weird muscle that causes problems for people. But apparently that's what Juwan Jennings is dealing with right now. But he was back at practice as well. And Jake Moody also back at practice. So tons of reinforcements at the trade deadline. The 49ers didn't have to make any trade or send any draft picks anywhere to get these guys back, right?
This almost feels like when the 49ers traded for Christian McCaffrey, because you didn't just get Christian McCaffrey, you got Nick Bosa back, you got Travarius Ward back. There were guys that were coming back from injury, and it felt like, oh, okay, the season is rebirth. At that time, people got to remember, 49ers just lost a game to Atlanta, lost a game to Kansas City Chiefs, and then boom, that was when the snowball started and heading in the right direction. The 49ers rattled off a bunch of wins for the rest of that season. And I could see something like that happening right now. A lot of people have asked me, like, hey, do you think that the 49ers will win the NFC West? And it's like, it's tough to kind of see it right now. Vision is just a little cloudy, but man, you start getting some of these familiar faces back, guys that really have contributed to helping the 49ers win games. And of course, I think they got the right guys. They got the right coaching staff. They got guys that are going to eventually turn this thing around. So sitting at 4-4 right now, but like you said, getting some reinforcement at the perfect time.
There has been a trade in the NFC West, Croc. I don't know if you saw this, but the Denver Broncos traded Baron Browning to the Arizona Cardinals. So the Cardinals are in this thing. The Cardinals are currently in first place in the NFC West right now. They beat the Bears this week, and they're adding to their defense, which is obviously their weaker unit on the football team, and they're going for it. The Cardinals have arrived officially, Croc. What do you think about the Arizona Cardinals? My guy Kruger on Twitter said that he thinks it's going to be the Niners and the Cardinals, and that both of these teams are going to be around 10-6, maybe 11-5 or so at the end of the season. And by the way, week 18 finale, San Francisco 49ers, Arizona Cardinals could get flexed to Sunday Night Football potentially, and it could be a winner gets in, loser leaves town and misses the playoffs completely due to tiebreakers there for the NFC West title. In week 18, Niners, Cardinals. Cardinals are going for it, and this is going to be an interesting one down the stretch. We talked a lot about how the 49ers really need to win the NFC West if they want to ensure getting in the playoffs this year.
Man, you just talked about kind of a prediction of the 49ers finishing 10-6, and you start to kind of take a glance at their schedule, and man, I mean, I definitely could see them be 10-6. But that will be tough. And that's the issue with when you lose games that you're not supposed to lose. And then now you start to look at the schedule and you have to play in Green Bay. We'll see what that weather's like. I don't think Green Bay is playing their best football, but when you have to travel, you're on the road, whether the element's going to look like, that's around Thanksgiving. That's something that I would say probably favors Green Bay. And then you're probably going to stay out there that way because next week, who do you play? The Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. Again, what is that weather going to look like? I just watched the Green Bay Packers play the Detroit Lions, and Jared Goff and those guys, they were able to make enough plays and pulled out a victory there and did well enough. One thing that we have a question about with Brock Purdy, right? And he does a lot of things very well. How well has he played in inclement weather? So now you're talking about two of these teams down the stretch where you potentially are going to face inclement weather. What would that look like? And then you still got the Rams, and then you have to play Miami, which we'll see. I don't think they look very good right now. And then you have to play Detroit, who looks like one of the strongest, if not the strongest team in the league right now. So every game from here on out is so pivotal for the 49ers. And just hearing 10-6, I'm pretty sure if you talk to outsiders, they could say, well, here's 3 losses for you guys right now, and you already got 4.
10-7 actually is what it would have to be. There's not 16 games anymore. There's 17 games, and I always screw that up too. So yeah, that means they could lose 3 more games to get to 10 wins. They'd have to go 7-3 the rest of the way to get to those, 6-3 the rest of the way. 9 more games to get to 10-6, and it's going to take.
I said all that, and I didn't even include the Arizona Cardinals game either, which they play in Arizona.
Right. So yeah, they could be 10-6 going in, and a 10, and you might need that 11th win to secure your playoff spot, and you're definitely going to need at least 10 wins. So the Niners are going to have to win 6 more games, whether it's the Arizona game or not, to even probably be in consideration for the playoffs this year. Which means you can lose 2 or 3 games the rest of the way, and this is how the schedule goes: at Tampa, then home against Seattle, at Green Bay, at Buffalo. You're at home against Chicago, at home against the Rams. You're at Miami, home against Detroit, and then at Arizona. I mean, none of those games are super easy. The easiest games on that schedule are probably Chicago at home and then at Miami, but that's a long trip, 3,000 miles. And, I think the Miami Dolphins with Tua and Tyreek and everybody they got should be a better football team than they are right now. And they might be much better in week 16 than they were, without Tua and having some hiccups for them this year. And obviously you got Seattle and Los Angeles there as well. So it is not an easy stretch the rest of the way for the 49ers. So they got some.
Miami played a tough game against Buffalo.
Yeah.
And we'll see if that's one of those teams that ends up being in a fire sale because they're sitting at 2-6 right now. But a lot of those losses probably can be attributed to not having Tua playing in those games. And now they have him back. They're at the very least going to be very competitive.
And you remember the last time the 49ers played the Bills, like Josh Allen destroyed the 49ers, right? That might have made Kyle Shanahan want to go trade for Trey Lance so he could get him one of those guys that's so big and strong and fast, and didn't quite work out in that regard for the 49ers. But that was the last time the Niners played Buffalo, right?
Yep.
I think. Yep. Yeah. So interesting. And good news, though, Croc. 49ers record in November is fantastic. And Kyle Shanahan's teams are usually ready to play post-bye. So we will get into that. And I got another interesting stat for you folks as well next. This final segment of Locked On 49ers is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. This month is all about gratitude. And along with, the person or people that help you out in your life. And to be honest, I love chatting with Eric Crocker every day, chatting with Matt Williamson every day, and probably two of the most common people I talk to in my life. And we talk a lot off the air. We talk a lot on the air. And I know I hear from people that that I don't even know personally that I talk to all the time on the podcast. And it's important that you have those conversations, those people to talk to. And if you don't, you got to find someone to talk to. And that's where therapy comes in. There's another person we don't think enough, and that's ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we're trying our best to make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, that isn't easy. Here's a reminder to send some thanks to the people in your life, including yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched to a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. Get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, Croc. Good news for the 49ers. Not only getting Christian McCaffrey back, Juwan Jennings, Feliciano, Moody, Dre Greenlaw running around on the sideline at practice, potentially even having someone traded in and added there in the next 24 hours. A lot of talent coming to help the San Francisco 49ers. They're already good, though, in the month of November. And this stat relayed from Nick Wagner and Kyle Madsen is interesting. Since 2021, the 49ers are 9-1, have only lost one game in the month of November, averaging 27.7 points per game and allowing just 13.3 points per game, and have a plus 13 turnover margin in the month of November. And that's where the 49ers start hitting their stride. And there's a good opportunity for the 49ers to do that this year as well. And as we just laid out with the records and the competition for playoff spots and the schedule coming up, it's important for them to get real hot real quick right now.
It definitely is. This is the prime time for them. And again, we had this conversation on yesterday's episode where I was asking, 49ers, are we putting previous expectations on this team, and is it a different team? I know they got guys coming back, but can we expect the same thing that we're used to seeing out of the 49ers? I think we all hope so, but it feels like it's, I don't know, the vibes are a little down, but I guess that, again, in the previous years, this is the exact same thing that happened.
I got a quick note on Brock Purdy. The Cowboys game, the last game the 49ers played, and remember the Niners came out, scored 3 times in the third quarter, and then kind of ran away from the Dallas Cowboys. This is very interesting. This one from OptaStats. There have been 26,276 quarters of NFL football that have been played since the year 2000, regular season and postseason combined. Over 26,000 quarters of football. In only one of those quarters did a quarterback throw for 100+ yards, have 100% completions while also rushing for 30+ yards, And that was Brock Purdy in the third quarter
Wow.
in week 8 against the Dallas Cowboys. The first time in over 26,000 quarters of NFL football played since the year 2000. That's how hot he was in that quarter.
No, he was on fire, and we were wondering, like, okay, well, what's going on a little bit? And nobody's going to play like a perfect game, but I thought he was noticeably off in the first half. And to see him come out second half and he hit some guys in stride, that created those big run after catch opportunities. And then, like you said, kind of making some plays with his legs. He kind of put it all on display, the full Purdy package that you're getting there in that third quarter.
We got some coaches being fired around the NFL, Croc. We talked yesterday how about it looked like a disaster for the New Orleans Saints, and we didn't even know they were going to fire their head coach. So Dennis Allen out. They have such a weird salary cap situation, the most unique in the NFL, that maybe some of the names you would look at their roster and think, hey, maybe trade for this guy. They can't even trade him because they would have so much dead money. There's like 2 or 3 veterans on the roster that would even help them save any money on contracts. So the Saints are in a weird spot. Could potentially some of those players be available on the Saints? Obviously, I think so. The Las Vegas Raiders, I don't know if they want to deal with the 49ers. They fired half of their offensive staff. Old Rich Scangarello, former 49ers quarterback coach, he got fired along with Luke Getsy, the offensive coordinator over there. So things are not going well. There's 9 teams with only 2 wins in the NFL right now. And so I think you could probably pluck a player off of a lot of those rosters, Croc. And I just saw a rumor today about a few players that might be available from the Cleveland Browns. And one of the guys is someone you liked a lot for a while at cornerback, Greg Newsome. And he's been the subject of trade rumors in years past as well. Elijah Moore, slot wide receiver, and David Njoku, tight end as well. All 3 of those guys potentially have been discussed in trades from the Cleveland Browns. Do any of those names get you excited?
Yeah, I think all of those names get you excited, but what's going to be realistic for the 49ers and what's really going to help the 49ers? We've talked a lot about Ronaldo Green and how well he's coming on and how well he's playing. And we've seen him make some plays, and I think he's forcing himself into kind of a starting role for the 49ers, that starting outside nickel cornerback. So he's doing terrific there. So I don't know if there's a need for Greg Newsome. Now, you're talking about Njoku. And how much better can he make the 49ers in 2 tight end sets? I mean, he is a terrific tight end, legit athlete, kind of gives off a little bit of kind of Vernon Davis vibes a little bit. I don't know, when I watch him play, just kind of a little Vernon Davis there. But, are the 49ers interested in having to feed another pass catcher? Elijah Moore, like him, smaller guy, but terrific route runner, separator. I think that's a guy Kyle Shanahan would like. Is he a guy that you potentially can have for a half-season rental? But again, you look at some of the young guys the 49ers have, and I think that's why they may stay pat, having guys like Ricky Pearsall, and then having Jacob Cowling, a smaller guy who's almost, I don't want to say he's Elijah Moore. He definitely wasn't Elijah Moore as a prospect, but he has kind of Elijah Moore type of ability in that smaller frame. So I'm not sure any of those guys make any sense for the Niners, but if I had to choose one of them, I'd go with the big tight end.
Yeah, I probably would too. I was thinking the same thing. Elijah Moore's contract is cheaper, so that factors in as well. Do the Niners want that sort of a quick, middle of the field slot type receiver? I think they've kind of got that covered with who they have on the roster. I would think they would want a little bit more of an outside type of a guy potentially to cover them for injury, or if they don't want to let Ricky Pearsall run a full load as a starter, as an outside guy in place of Brandon Ayuk. So interesting names there. It would depend on cost, but all of them would be really good players and help the 49ers. But the secondary right now is probably the one place you don't look for a need with the 49ers. If they didn't have Ronaldo Green doing his stuff as a rookie, then I would say Greg Newsome. He's a guy in the past where if he's available, Niners should definitely trade for Greg Newsome. And now all of a sudden he might actually be available. And I don't know if there's necessarily a need or a fit there for him. But Joku would be interesting in those 2 tight end sets. The 49ers could probably upgrade number 2 tight end. And, George Kittle's a guy that's been banged up in the past as well. And if you might just be looking at depth and being like, look, we don't want to get too thin on offense, even if we're getting healthy right now, because that can change real quick. Do the 49ers make a move? Yes or no, Croc? Less than 24 hours away from the NFL trade deadline.
Yes. And there are some people that think that that may be optimistic, but I've just seen the 49ers when they are in a position to where they feel like, hey, we can get better at one of these spots. All they've shown us is we're going to do whatever we have to do. whether it was Emmanuel Sanders, whether it was Christian McCaffrey, whether it was Jimmy Garoppolo, whether it was I'm blanking on the name.
Emmanuel Sanders, Jimmy G, Christian McCaffrey, Randy Gregory,
Randy Gregory, Chase Young. I mean,
Charles
like that's
Woodson.
a team that is very, very active at the trade deadline. That's a lot of names you just rattled off. I mean, the team has only been here for what? I mean, this regime. What is this, year 8? I
Yeah,
believe it's year 8. So if this is year 8, in the previous 7 years, you've made 6 different trades at the trade deadline. One where you actually traded a guy away, Rashard Robinson. People forget that. That was year 1. But as far as guys coming to you, they Jimmy Garoppolo, that was the first year they got here, so they had that one come to you, and they've continued to do that and make those kind of moves, especially when they feel like they can get better. Like year 2, Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt. They weren't trading at the trade deadline. But I feel like every season after that, they have. So it almost feels kind of like, will the 49ers make a move? Oh, man, you're just being a homer. You're being optimistic. No, like all they've shown us is if we feel like we can get better and there's that guy out there, we're going to go get him. So it's really not so much about will they or would they. It's just, is the right guy that they like available? And if that guy is, they will 100% make a trade. But I don't think it's going to, oh, our team is so good, or no, we're good, or oh, we're not aggressive enough to do that. No, they've shown they are plenty aggressive, maybe the most aggressive team at the trade deadline in the NFL.
absolutely. That's why I think they will get a deal done, and it might be a name that's not on our radar. It might be, an Azeez Ojulari or a Calais Campbell, or it might be somebody that we're not thinking. Like Charles Omenihu wasn't a name on our lips, at the trade deadline.
I forgot about Omenihu. They traded for Charles Omenihu from Houston.
Yeah, and so the defensive line, they've been active. They covet a strong defensive line, and I still think that's probably the place I would bet that they add somebody, and it might be a role player. It could be a bigger name, but I think they will do something. And next time we speak, it'll be post-trade deadline, Winky Wednesday style, and I think there will be at least some addition to the San Francisco 49ers, even if it's someone brought in on that, like, 2026, swap a 6 for a 7th round, basically the least amount you can give up for a player, whether it's a deal like that or they even give up a mid-round pick next year for a player. The 49ers are going to do something. I got a feeling, because they are active and they are aggressive. And if they think they can find something that makes sense, they're going to do it for sure. And so that's what I expect. And we'll find out tomorrow when we reconvene here on Locked On 49ers. Make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss an episode. And Croc and I back tomorrow. Locked On 49ers.